Hey guys, thanks for joining Learn to Play. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Arcadia Quest. This is a 2 to 4 player game that was put out by Cool Mini or Not. It takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour and a half to play, depending upon the player's skill levels. And it's a player versus player game, so with this game you get to beat up your friends, and you're competing against each other to try to be the first guild to complete a certain number of quests in each scenario. Now, there's two different modes to the game. You can play it as a standalone scenario game where you just play one scenario and the winner of the scenario wins. Or where you really get to see how well the game is set up is in the campaign mode, where you're going to be playing 6 linked scenarios, and the game itself comes with 11, so you'll get every game that you play can be a little bit different. And at the end of each one of these scenarios, your heroes will be able to purchase new gear and new items to increase their power and get ready for the next scenario. And then at the end of that final scenario, the 6th scenario, you'll fight against Lord Fang, which is the overall bad guy in this game. And the winner of that will be the overall winner and the new king of Arcadia. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. Alright, so here we have an example of one of the characters that the players will have to pick from. So at the top of each card is the character's name. And then on the side of the card you have the number of dice the character will roll for defense and the number of hit points the character can take before he dies. And then each character has its own special ability, which lists its name and then what that special ability does for the character. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at one of the tiles. So each tile is broken down into 9 different squares, and each square will have a central dot. If it does not have a central dot, then it is considered a block space, which we'll cover more in a minute. Another thing with the squares is that each square has a maximum capacity of 2 figures, whether they be heroes or monsters or a combination of the two. A lot of the squares will have different images and scenery on them. They will not affect movement or gameplay in any way. Alright, so now I'd like to define some of the important terms that you'll be facing in this game, being close, full and block spaces, and line of sight. Alright, so the first term we're going to look at is close, which means to either be sharing the same space or to be in any of the 4 orthogonal spaces that share an open edge with that space. So in our example we have Grum here in the center, and so he is close to the space he is on, as well as the 4 spaces that are orthogonal to him, or north, south, east, and west. A space that is diagonal from it is not considered close, so any of the 4 diagonal spaces are not close to him. And a space whose edge is blocked by a wall or closed door is also not considered to be close. So if Grom was here, he would be close to the 2 spaces, the one he's on and the one in front of him, but not the 2 to his sides because they have blocking walls. Alright, now we're going to look at full and block spaces. So a space with 2 characters in it is considered full. These can be monsters or heroes. It does not matter. Nobody else can end their move inside a full space. If at least one of those characters is an ally of the active character that's trying to move, he can move through the space as long as there is a space that's open that he can reach, and these spaces do not block his line of sight. Now, we also have block spaces, which have 2 enemy figures of the active hero in them. Those spaces are considered blocked, which means that he cannot move through those spaces, and he cannot block, or he cannot draw line of sight through them as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at Grum here. So for him, you can have spaces that are both full and blocked. So he has the space in front of him is considered blocked because it has 2 enemy models in it. It's also full because it has 2 models. On his side we have 2 enemies, so that one is blocked as well. To his back side, he has a space that is free because he only has 1 enemy model in it. And to his other side, he has a space that is full because it has 2 figures, but it is a space that he can move past and get to the monster in this space if he chooses to because it has a friendly figure in it. Alright, so the last thing we're going to look at is line of sight. So a ranged attack has no limitation as far as the range that it can target. The only condition is that it must have line of sight to its target. In order to determine this, you draw a straight line from the center dot in your space to the center dot in the space of the target that you're wishing to target with your ranged attack. As long as this line does not cross any blocking elements such as walls, closed doors, or blocked spaces from enemies, then it has line of sight and you can target that space. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples of this. So we have Greensleeves here, and he can target the character in front of him. He cannot target the other character over here because it's going to cross through the wall. He can target this monster here because the door is open, so he can draw a straight line of sight to that square. If we look at the back side, he can target the two monsters in the back because he's cutting through a square with a friendly model in it. He can target the two models here, two enemy models here, because he's only going through the corner of a space with only one wall. Now, if there was two enemies in this space, then it would be considered blocked and he could not draw line of sight through. Now, if we look at an example in the back here, the dwarf, he cannot target the dwarf because he's cutting through a space that has two enemy models in it. If you need more examples of this, the book does an excellent job of it. They have 3 full diagrams to give you all different examples of different ways in which you can draw a line of sight and other conditions that will block it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and look at player setup now. So each player will choose a guild dashboard that they'd like to play with, and then take the tokens that are associated with that. After that, then the players are going to go ahead and select their heroes, and there's 2 ways to do this. The first is the players can just go through and select the heroes that they like to play, and they will choose 3 heroes for their guild. Or if you're doing the advanced draft setup, then you would simply take all the hero cards, shuffle them up, deal them out as equally as you can to all the players. It's okay if there's some extra cards or players get some more cards than others. Once the players have the cards, then they can go ahead and go through those and select one of the cards that they like to use and place it face down in front of them. Once they're done with that, then they'll take the rest of the cards and pass them to the player to their left. Each player will do this. Go ahead and look at the cards again. Select another hero and place them face down and pass those cards over. And then one final time the heroes will select their last hero, or the players will select their last hero, and the rest of the cards will be discarded back to the box. Once the players have done this, then they will go ahead and place their heroes on the top of their 3 spots, and they will also get 5 starting equipment cards: the Nova Bolt, Parrying Blade, Rusty Blade, Life Drain, and Slingshot. With these cards, the players will go ahead and give them out to the different heroes in any way that they like. Once they're done with that, then they are ready to start. Alright, so for this video we're going to go ahead and set up the District of Hammers, and all you'd simply do is lay out the board and then lay out all the components on it as detailed on the map on the side. So the first thing we're going to do is set out the doorways. There's 2 different types. You have the short doorways, which have a little bit of a blue hue to them, and then you have the long doorways, which have a little bit more of a tan hue. From there, you go ahead and put out the portal points. After that, you can go ahead and randomize and put out the exploration tokens. Go ahead and put out all the monsters. After that, you'll shuffle up the spawn points and put them in their spawning areas face down. Any extra spawn points you have will be discarded back to the box. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and flip those points over. Alright, so next you're going to go ahead and place out the spawn tile. This is where the monsters will go when they are killed. When that tile is full, then the monsters will spawn, and we're going to look at more of that in a little while. After that, then you're going to go ahead and place out all the quests that are associated with this scenario. So the first one we have is to find lost weapons, and it has 2 objectives with it, which are marked on the scenario map where to place them. And it also has 2 Skullcracker cards with it, so when one of the heroes gathers that objective, then they will receive one of these cards. After that, we have the kill 3 monsters, and then depending upon which guilds are playing, for each guild that's playing in this game, then you'd place out their corresponding kill card for that guild. So with us, we're playing the 4 players, so we'll put out one of those for each guild. After that, then the players are going to go ahead and pick which side that they're going to start on. So we'll have blue over here, red up top, orange in the corner over here, and we'll have green over here. From there, then the heroes can go ahead and place out their figures, or the guilds can place out their figures. Now, you can have your figures up to 2 in one space. however you want. All right, so the last thing you need to put out are the monster stat cards so all players can see them. So the first trigger of a guard reaction is movement. So whenever a hero occupying a space close to a monster moves to another space, he triggers that monster's guard reaction and causes the monster to immediately attack that hero. So in our example, what we're going to look at is we're going to have Grum here. And so he's going to do his movement. So the first thing he's going to do is move into this space here. So he moved into a space that contains monsters that are close to it. So at this point, the monsters do not react because he's moved into a space and not away from them. So from here, if Grum continues to move, so let's say he moves into this space with the portal, he would trigger guard reactions from both of those monsters because he's moving away from a space that they are close to and in which they are guarding. So at that point, then the player to his right would be able to make an attack with each monster that was activated. Now, a couple things to also note is that a hero is not going to trigger a guard reaction in monsters if he uses his points to open or close a door, or if he activates a portal. So let's say for Grum's last move, he activated the portal and teleported away. He would not activate the Orc's guard reaction because he used the portal to get away. The second trigger is when a hero performs an attack that does not target any of the monsters close to him. He will trigger a guard reaction of all close monsters, whether he attacks an enemy hero anywhere or a monster at a distance. So let's take a look at an example of this. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and use Greensleeves here. And we're going to go ahead and first move him up a couple spaces so that he can get into contact. So when he moves into this space, now he is close to our two monsters here. So in our first example, we're going to go ahead and say that Greensleeves wants to attack this enemy hero over here. Before he performs the attack, since he is attacking a hero and not any close monsters, then both of our monsters here will get a guard reaction against him and get to attack him first, which will be resolved before he makes his attack. In the other example, or the other circumstances that will cause the monsters to trigger, is if he makes an attack against a monster at range with monsters that are close to him. The only way that Greensleeves could avoid this is if he targeted one of the monsters in this space. If he does that, then the other monster will not react to him as he is meeting one of the conditions for not triggering a guard reaction. Let's break down one of the monster cards. So at the top of the card, it's going to list the type of monster that it is and what kind of minion it is. So this is a minor minion. On the side of the card, it's going to show the monster's health and overkill rating and the amount of coins that a hero will receive for killing that monster. On the bottom of the card, it's going to show the amount of movement points that monster has, the type of attack that it can perform, so the goblin has a ranged attack, the number of dice that monster will throw when it makes an attack, and if it has any special abilities, it'll be listed in that column there. The last thing is the level at the bottom of the card. Now, there are 4 different versions of each monster, and if you're playing a scenario, depending upon the scenario number that you're playing in the campaign will denote which type of monster or what level of monster you're playing. So in scenario 1, you'll play level 1 monsters. In scenarios 2 and 3 will be the level 2 or 3 monster or the red level. 4 and 5 will be light purple, and scenario 6 will have the dark purple. Now, as you can see, this is just a basic goblin, but his hit points move up, and even his number of attack dice will go up. Now, we also have different types of monsters. We have major minions, we have minor villains, and major villains. And as you can see by their stats, they have considerably harder stat lines. Some of them even get defensive dice, and most of them have special abilities and conditions that they will also inflict on our heroes. Alright, so now we're ready to head into the player turn. So when a player takes his turn, he may do one of 2 different things. He can activate one of his heroes, or he can rest his guild. Each turn a player can only do one or the other, but never both. So the first thing we're going to look at is hero activation. A player chooses a single one of his heroes to activate. Activating a hero turn after turn is allowed. The selected hero is now considered active and may perform in any order his movement and then one attack. Movement cannot be interrupted by an attack or resumed afterwards. So you must complete all your movement first or perform the attack first and then do your movement. One thing to note is if an ability allows a player to activate an extra hero during his turn, it must be used on a hero that has not yet been activated during this turn. So you can't use something to activate a hero 2 times in a row during the same turn. So let's go ahead and take a look at movement now. So when you select a hero, so let's say that the blue guild here selects Scarlet to take her turn. The first thing she's going to want to do is move, because right now she can't do anything else. So movement points, she has 3 movement points that she can spend on different things. She's allowed to open or close a door, so let's go ahead and open the door for 1 point. All movement is done orthogonally, so you cannot move diagonally, so her second point will be to move forward. Now from here she can choose to stop if she wishes to try to target and attack the monster, or she can move to her left or right. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at portals. So a hero that's inside a space that contains a portal may spend 1 of their movement points to move from that portal to another portal of the same color. There's only a couple restrictions on this. If the portal that they wish to move to is considered a blocked space, then they may not move to it. If the portal is full, then they can move to it as long as they can move to a free space after they move into the portal. So let's take a look at a couple examples of that. So we have Scarlet here. If she wishes to move to this portal, she can do so because it is open right now. She would spend 1 of her movement points and move there. Now, in another example, let's go ahead and say that the Green Guild has already placed 2 of their heroes here. Scarlet is not allowed to move to that portal now because it is blocked, because it has 2 enemy figures in it. Now, the blocked square can also contain monsters. Now, in another example, let's go ahead and say that we had this situation where the space is considered full because she has an ally in that square. Scarlet, if she had 2 points of movement, could spend 1 point of movement to move to the square and then 1 point of movement to move off the square into a free square, in which case then she can use the portal. Now the last thing to note is that using a portal does not trigger a guard reaction from close monsters, which we're going to take a closer look at in a little bit. Alright, so now let's go ahead and take a look at an attack action. The active hero may attempt to attack an enemy of his choosing, either a monster or an enemy hero. So the first one we're going to do is look at the combat versus from Grum to Zazu. So when we do that, we're going to come over to Grum's card and check under his inventory and select a weapon that he has that has not been exhausted yet. So we have the Rusted Blade, so we're going to go ahead and mark it with an exhausted token. This is a melee weapon, so it must be used on an enemy character or monster that is close to Grum. So we have Zazu, so we're good there. From here, then we can go ahead and grab the dice for combat, which is listed on the side, and then any other bonus dice from his ability or any other equipment, which we don't have any. And then same with Zazu, he can grab his defensive dice, and if he gets any bonus defensive dice from any abilities or anything, he can get those as well, which he doesn't. From here, we can go ahead and roll the dice. And with Grum, he's using a melee weapon, so he needs swords or criticals. So let's go ahead and say we rolled a critical. Every time you roll a critical, it counts as a hit for whatever you're trying to achieve it with, and then you get to roll another dice. And you get to keep doing this until you roll a symbol that is not a critical. So we have 5 hits here with Grum. And Zazu's going to go ahead and roll his defense, and that works the same way. So with every critical he rolls, he gets to roll another dice. So he rolled 1 success, so he takes 1 away from Grum's attacks, and Grum does 4 damage, and Zazu only has 4 health. So that'll be enough to kill Zazu. So we'll mark Zazu with a death token and take Zazu's figure off the board. From here, Grum will get a coin for killing an enemy hero, which is one of the ways we get coins in this. Coins are useful for campaign play because at the end of each scenario you can use all your coins to purchase new equipment. If you're just playing a single off mission, then the coins aren't as important and you can choose to track them or not. The other thing we did with Grum is that we met a condition for one of our quests, which is to kill an enemy hero from an opposing guild of green. So we can go ahead and mark that. And we are the first ones to achieve that, so we'll receive 1 coin for being the first to achieve that quest. In our second example, we're going to go ahead and take a look at an attack from Scarlet to the Orc. Now, anytime a hero attacks a monster, it is a risk because the monster will get a payback reaction and have an opportunity to potentially attack the hero that attacked them, even if that hero completely fails the attack. Now, there is one exception to this, is if the hero does enough damage to meet the monster's overkill rating, which is the number next to the skull underneath that monster's health. So with our orc, he has 2 health, and his overkill rating is 3. So if we do 3 damage or more, we will kill the orc outright, and he won't get his payback reaction. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So Scarlet has to choose one of her weapons to use. So she's going to go ahead and use the parrying blade and mark it as exhausted. And then she's going to go ahead and grab her attack dice, which she gets 2 for the parrying blade, and she's going to roll her attack. So she rolls 1 hit, and let's go ahead and say that the second dice was also a successful hit, which is enough to kill the orc, but it doesn't meet his overkill rating, so he is going to get to do his payback reaction before he's removed. So from this point, the player to Scarlet's right is going to control the monster's reaction. He can choose to move the monster, and during the monster's move, he can use the monster's movement to open doors or use portals with that monster. And then he's also allowed to attack with the monster. If he chooses to attack with the monster, it must target the active hero that attacked that monster. And if he attacks first, he is not allowed to move the monster after attacking. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we have the orc here who's going to attack Scarlet as part of his payback reaction. So he's going to get his 3 dice, which are marked on his card. And he is a melee monster, so he will do 3. He needs swords or criticals, and monsters will benefit from the criticals as well. So he does 3 points of damage. Now Scarlet has 3 defensive dice, and she gets 1 bonus dice for the parrying blade, and she will get that even though the parrying blade is exhausted. She rolls 2 criticals, and so she'll get 2 additional dice, and another critical, which is enough to stop the 3 hits, so we don't even need to continue rolling after that. So at that point, if the orc would have been able to do enough damage to kill Scarlet, then all the guilds except for the blue guild would have received 1 gold coin. Anytime a monster kills a hero, all the other guilds will receive a coin for that. So that is a good way of getting coins as well. So at this point, now the orc is done, we can go ahead and remove him and add him to the spawning tile. And Scarlet will receive the 1 coin for killing that orc. And she can also mark that she killed one of the monster on the 3-kill monster quest. One other thing to note about payback reactions is that monsters are never exhausted after they perform their attacks. And if a hero's attack targets multiple monsters, the player to that player's right will choose only 1 monster to respond back with a payback reaction. Alright, so now I'd like to go over overkill. And for this example, I'm going to go ahead and bring the orc back. So anytime a hero performs an attack against a monster, it's always going to get its payback reaction back against the hero. Now there's one exception to this, which is called the overkill rule. And what that is if we look on the orc's card, underneath his health is a picture of a skull with a number on it, which for him is 3. This is the overkill rating. So for a hero, if a hero performs an attack against a monster, and that attack is so powerful that it meets the number of points that are listed on the overkill, then that hero will kill that monster, and the monster will not get to attack back or perform its payback reaction. So in our previous example, Scarlet performed an attack, and she did 2 damage, which was just enough to kill the orc, in which case then he got his payback reaction. If she would have happened to roll a critical in an additional sword or more, she would have done enough damage to meet that orc's overkill rating, and she would have killed him instantly, and he would have been removed from the board without getting his payback reaction. Now, another thing to keep in mind is even if that orc had taken a wound, she still must roll equal to or higher than the overkill rating in order to kill the orc and not get the payback reaction. So she still would have had to roll 3 or more hits in order to bring him down as an overkill. Alright, so the other option a player has is to perform a rest. A player can choose to spend his turn allowing his heroes to rest. When a guild rests, none of its heroes are activated and cannot move or attack. When a rest action is done, there's a set order of steps that must be followed. So the first one is we get to unexhaust all of our equipment cards by removing the exhaust tokens from them. We can also choose to rearrange any of our equipment with our heroes. We can also rearrange any expiration tokens that we have with our heroes. The only thing we're not allowed to move are quest tokens that we may have or death curse cards that the heroes have, which we'll cover more in that section. So the other thing we can do is resurrect heroes that have died from previous turns. When we choose to resurrect a hero, we can choose to either place him in one of the starting locations of our guild, or we can place him in a close space to a hero that is already on the field. So, for example, with Grum dying, he could choose to place himself close to Scarlet, which would be in her space, or one of the other spaces that are close to her as long as there's an opening. Once we've done with all this stuff, then our turn is over and it will proceed to the next player. When a spawn tile becomes full with 5 figures, or when there are no more monsters left on the board, the active player must perform a monster spawn as soon as he finishes his turn. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and we'll say the blue guild here happens to kill the orc during their turn. If they kill any additional monsters past the 5th monster in the slot, then those monsters are simply removed from the board and put back into the box. Once the blue guild's turn is over, then we would go ahead and immediately do a monster spawn. We would grab 2 black dice, and starting with the first monster, we would roll those dice. If we roll one of the spawning points on the map, then that monster is added to that spawning point, unless it's a spawning point that's already full. If it is, then that monster is returned to the box. And if we roll symbols that are not listed on the board, the monster is also returned to the box. So let's go ahead and start here. 2 criticals, so we don't have that, so he is returned to the box. Moving on to monster number 2. 2 swords, that space is open, so he'll be added there. The third monster goes in the same space. Number 4 is a sword and a crit, which we don't have, so he's returned to the box. And the 5th and final one is 2 swords, which is already taken, so that one is also returned to the box. Now that we're done with that spawning, then we would go ahead and move into the next player's turn. Each scenario will have a number of quests assigned to it that the guilds will be competing against in order to complete that scenario. So there's 2 different types of quests we're going to look at. The first one are the top ones, which are the PvP quests, or player versus player. And there's only 4 of those, which are representing by each one of the guilds. So depending upon how many guilds are playing in each scenario will be how many of these cards will be out. So if there's only a 3-player game, you'll only use the 3 guilds that are out. The other type of quests are the PvE quests, which are player versus environment quests. And there's a number of those as well, and each scenario will use different ones. With either one of the quests, the completing it is outlined in the under section here. So with this one here, if you kill any 3 monsters, you'll complete it. If you collect the quest token, you'll complete that one. And when you kill a hero from the opposing red guild, you'd complete that one. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the PvP quests, you cannot complete your own guild's quest. So if you're playing as the red guild, you cannot complete that quest because you can't kill your own characters. When you complete a quest, you would place your token on that quest, and if you happen to be the first guild to complete it, you'll get 1 coin for being the first guild to complete that quest. And then the other coin is for when, at the end of the scenario, each guild will receive a coin for each quest they've completed. Now, the one other thing is some of the quests will grant items, and they will only grant items to, depending upon how many items are out there. So if you're playing a 4-player game, only the first 2 guilds that complete this quest will receive the Skullcracker item card. In order to win a scenario, it's the first guild to complete a certain number of quests that will win that scenario. And that is depending upon how many players are playing in the game. If you're playing a campaign, the last thing you do at the end of each scenario is the upgrade phase. So the first thing you do in the upgrade phase is if any of your heroes have Death Curse cards on their profile, then you go ahead and discard those. reshuffle that deck and deal out this death cards to each character that has death card tokens for each token. So for Grum, we'll get 2 cards, and he will keep just one of them, the one that has the highest value, so he gets this one here. And then we have Green Sleeves, who receives 1 card, so he will have that. Once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and remove those tokens. All the heroes will regain all their health and discard any of the tokens they have. They will receive coins for any treasure chests that they have, so go ahead and do that. Next, for the scenario you just completed, go ahead and grab the upgrade deck. So with us, we completed level 1, so we'll grab the level 1 upgrade deck. Go ahead and shuffle it and deal out 6 cards to each player. From there, each player will go ahead and do a draft, so he'll look through the cards he has and choose 2 of them to keep, and then pass the other 4 to the player to his left. Go ahead and look at those, and again choose 2, and then pass those, and so each player will end that with 6 cards. Out of those 6 cards, the players are allowed to purchase 3, as long as they have the gold for them, and add those to their profile. Each character can only have a maximum of 4 items. Any extras have to be discarded, so you can choose and rearrange your items however you want. You're allowed to keep 1 coin to start the next scenario if you have any coins remaining. Anything after that then is just simply discarded. And then from there, the winning guild is allowed to pick the next scenario, and you're ready to start the next game.